At the sound of a slap, a child falls to the ground injured. Startled, the boy cries as he looks up, and before him, his stepmother stares at him with contempt. The boy kneels and apologizes. Calling him Hilam, the woman questions whether he really believed he would get away with just an apology. Furious, she asks why he is such a useless child and scolds him for breaking one of her precious vases. Despite his tears and claims that it was unintentional, she pays him no heed. His mother grips his clothing and tells him to be quiet, not wanting to hear another word. As the boy screams, the woman drags him to the mansion gate. All of the young boy's shouts are one by one ignored. And finally, she pushes him out of the house. Coldly, the woman tells him she won't repeat herself, ordering him to leave her house immediately. Helpless, the boy watches his own abandonment without reaction. Left outside, wearing only the clothes on his back. Meanwhile, a woman closes the book, irritated by the plot. The girl thinks she can't read this anymore, pointing out that even though she's read the book many times, this part still bothers her. All that irritation is directed at the character Luna Mazamel, the villain of the story. She had been a young woman of plebeian origin, admired for her gentle nature. But due to her beauty, she was forced to become the second wife of a feudal lord. However, a few days before the wedding, someone from another world awakened in her body. Realizing her new identity, she fled her native village. In a new place, this new person acted like a true angel, and so she ended up seducing and marrying Viscount Mazamel, a wealthy, divorced man. The girl was able to live extravagantly for a time, yet for an unknown reason. Shortly after the marriage, Viscount Mazamel fell ill and suffered until his eventual death. By his coffin, Luna knelt, seemingly mourning the loss of her partner. However, beneath her veil, she was smiling. The woman, now titled Viscountess Mazamel, expelled her late husband's own son, a boy named Hilam, immediately after assaulting him. The reader felt immense compassion and pity for Hilam, thinking he would have been treated better if she had been in Luna's place. Wondering how someone could abuse a child so much. After all, to her, characters like that deserved to die. Meanwhile, her oven beeped, reminding her of the madeleines she was baking. The girl thought they looked perfectly baked and well risen today. Now all that was left was to coat them with a double layer of chocolate, and they would be ready. As she watched the heat, the young woman heard loud knocks in the background. Someone was calling her, asking her to open the door. She had been hopeful that today would be a peaceful day. But on the other side of the door, a drunk man with a bottle in his hand was shouting at her. In the end, the girl, like the boy in the book, was also a victim of domestic violence. Her father, despite her having moved address several times, always showed up drunk no matter where she went. The young woman wondered how her father had managed to find that address, noting that he was here to try to extort more money from his daughter. Determined to ignore him, the protagonist turned her attention back to her sweets. But when she moved her hand to open the oven, several crackling sounds echoed through the kitchen, followed by a great explosion. As the fire spread, the young woman wondered if her life was not even more dramatic than the story she had just read. After all, her own oven had exploded as fast as the blink of an eye. Stretching out her hand, the girl tried to speak, but her voice refused to come out. She felt the pain of having her entire body consumed by flames. Her body thrown to the ground as black, suffocating smoke entered her lungs. Her whole life had been spent running, always trying to escape something. And even in her final moment, everything remained so tragic and empty. With a flash of light, the girl woke up in a place lit by a large chandelier as she wondered where she was. Confused, she wondered if by any chance she was in heaven. Opening her eyes, the young woman quickly dismissed the idea. Remembering that she had spent her whole life cursing someone like her wouldn't go there. Suddenly, a maid called her, referring to her as Viscountess Mazamel. The phrase left her surprised. The maid continued, pointing out that a small incident had occurred. Still confused about why she had been called that, the girl got out of bed, and thinking it was impossible, hurried around the room, seeing her reflection in the mirror, shiny blonde hair, amethyst-colored eyes, and a graceful figure. She was the very portrait of Luna Mazamel, the villain of the work she had reread so many times. Wondering if she had truly woken up in a novel, the protagonist remembered her thoughts in her previous life, wanting Hilam to be treated better by the Viscountess. Despite that, she had never really wished to become Luna herself. Worried, the maid asks if everything is all right. Trying to keep her composure so as not to be treated like a crazy person, the protagonist asks what was happening. The maid, hesitant, informs her that Hilam had fainted. The protagonist is alarmed. However, hiding her emotions, she remembers that she must act like Viscountess Mazamel, or she would arouse suspicion. Thus, the girl asks if Hilam really had fainted. The maid confirms, asking whether she should deal with him the same way as last time. However, the girl is unsure what the maid means by deal with him. Saying she does not recall exactly, the girl asks how they had handled it. The maid explains that the Viscountess used to lock the boy in his room and would not let him out until he recovered. Horrified, Luna feels a chill run down her spine. In the end, she decides to visit Hilam immediately. Surprised by the change in behavior, the maid hesitates. But the protagonist questions why she is standing there and asks her to show the way. The maid apologizes, and they begin walking toward the boy's room. With a somber expression, Luna can think of nothing but young Hilam. Arriving at the room, the Viscountess holds the door, expecting him to be right behind her. Opening it slowly, Luna is taken aback. Upon entering, she sees a boy lying on his bed. At the sound of her voice, Hilam curls up and wakes. Rising, the boy turns to her, revealing small bruises on his face. Hesitant and frightened, Hilam calls her mother. Luna explains that she heard he was unwell and asks if it is true. Trembling and apologizing for being a burden, the boy insists he is not sick, his eyes on the verge of tears as he clutches the bedsheets tightly. In that moment, the protagonist comprehends the full extent of the abuse the boy has suffered, something she had only read about before, now unfolding before her. In the future of the book, after enduring this torment, Hilam grows up and becomes emperor. He ultimately achieves his revenge against Viscountess Mazamel, bringing her to death. He has managed to overcome his past and obtain his vengeance. Although in her past life, Luna felt satisfaction reading about Hilam's triumph, the same cannot be said of herself. Because unlike Hilam, the protagonist never found an opening to escape her biological father, who had always harassed her. However, now she sees this as an opportunity to help Hilam. Turning to the maid, Luna asks why he is so thin. Disturbed, the maid stammers nervously. Hesitant and trembling slightly, she finally responds that the boy had not eaten anything for days. The girl smiles for a second, understanding the situation. With a serious look, she thinks this is nothing more than a flimsy excuse. Thus, she calmly instructs the maid to bring soup for Hilam. The maid is surprised but quickly complies. Still trembling, the boy watches everything in silence. Luna turns to Hilam, who trembles in fear and curls up. Step by step, the girl approaches. And when she finally reaches Hilam, the boy closes his eyes, afraid of what might happen. When he finally peeks, he sees his stepmother's sad and worried expression. Luna thinks that the boy truly is unwell, feeling his fever just by touching his arm. Reaching out her other hand to the boy, the protagonist wonders if it is all right to move a little closer. Suddenly, Hilam begins to cry in a defensive posture and, in a panic, starts apologizing. The protagonist is startled by his reaction. After all, the boy before her trembles as he insists he will not trouble her again. Luna moves her hand toward him and then tries to reassure him by hugging him. She also explains that she came because she was worried about his health and that he does not need to apologize. Hilam continues to blame himself, apologizing for having fallen ill and believing he caused problems for her. But soon he revises what he said, trying to pretend that he really is not sick. Watching all of this, the protagonist wonders how much a child has to suffer to apologize before even greeting someone. With a somber expression, she calls to the boy and says that from now on he is forbidden to apologize. Confused, the boy tries to speak, but Luna quickly points out that he should never apologize for being sick. The young woman then wonders if there is a wet towel that might help bring down Hilam's fever. She sees a towel thrown on a nearby tray, but looking around, Luna notices the state of the room. The moldy ceiling, cobwebs everywhere. The room is extremely dirty. It is no surprise the boy is ill. Luna thinks she needs to change this room as quickly as possible. As she pours the contents of the pitcher into a bowl, she realizes that even the water is giving off a rotten smell. Asking if Hilam had drunk it, the boy timidly says that he thought he had permission to drink it, apologizing once again. The protagonist, seeing the terrible state of the water, notes how dire the situation is. With the door creaking, the maid arrives with soup for Hilam, and Luna says that she will feed him herself, which startles the maid. While the maid protests, the girl examines the soup. Seeing that the food on the plate isn't much different from the state of the room, she wonders how she could have forgotten. She remembers that in the book, that same maid, who had always been close to the Viscountess, used to actively abuse Hilam while his stepmother neglected him. Furious, the protagonist hurls the plate against the wall, frightening the maid. With a diabolical smile, she orders the woman to bring her something that humans can eat, not that garbage. Later, the woman finally returns with edible soup. But Luna seizes the opportunity to make her life hell, requesting water, towels, and cold medicine every time the maid steps into the room. The maid obeys, but, exhausted, comes back to report that the mansion has no children's medicine. Luna snaps that if the mansion lacked supplies, it was the maid's responsibility to go out and find them. With a macabre smile, the protagonist asks if the maid was by any chance trying to argue with her. Terrified, the woman apologizes, insisting that she was not. Turning away, Luna picks up a spoon and asks Hilam to open his mouth. Despite fear and embarrassment, Hilam obeys and finally eats something after days of fasting. The protagonist strokes his hair, saying she's relieved to see him eating well. Yet, worry still shadows her face. She realizes that Hilam has built a wall around himself as an emotional defense, as if covered in thorny vines. To him, everyone in the mansion, including the Viscountess, was like those thorns. As the boy grows, those painful memories will remain trapped inside him, corroding him from within. And let's agree, even with all that, he's a cutie. Moving on, there was only one person who could fix Hilam's troubled life. The man who was his godfather in the original story, Duke Lasius Huppert. Thus, the protagonist thinks she must find a way to bring him to her side. That way, Hilam could finally escape Luna's clutches, which have only given him cold and painful memories. Later that night, the maid returns, saying she broke the adult pill in half. She hands the halves to Luna. Feigning gratitude, the girl laments that they've run out of water again. With a cynical smile, she orders the maid to fetch more. Irritated, the maid wonders why Luna didn't ask for everything at once. As the maid trembles with anger, Luna thinks it's stupid that the woman can't even hide her irritation in front of her mistress. Indeed, the maid was a fool. She hadn't even noticed her mistress's change in behavior. Smiling, the woman still thought it was all a game, believing Luna would comfort Hilam briefly only to crush his hopes again. When the maid returns to the room, the protagonist asks her for a wet towel, but Luna throws down the bucket, saying it's too wet and that the maid should wring it out and bring it back. The Viscountess even complains that it's not cold enough. Laughing, the maid goes downstairs, but suddenly Luna calls out, asking what she's doing. After all, she should be cleaning up the broken plate. At the end of her patience, the maid agrees. While she wipes the dirty floor, the Viscountess tells her she may leave the mansion immediately. The statement freezes the maid for a second. Dropping the cloth, the woman begs her mistress to wait a moment, questioning what she means and pointing out she's been her most loyal servant. The protagonist asks if she wouldn't like to leave, to which the maid replies that of course not. It wouldn't be fair to fire her like this. Removing one of her earrings, Luna tells the maid she's right and acted without thinking. Holding both earrings in her hands, the Viscountess asks the maid to take them. Surprised, the woman doesn't understand at first. With a happy expression, she then asks if Luna is truly giving her her favorite earrings. The maid believes it's all a setup to surprise her and hand her this gift. As she's about to say she hadn't noticed, Luna interrupts, pointing out that the maid now has a choice. Be cast out for stealing from her mistress and live the rest of her life as a fugitive, or simply leave the mansion of her own accord. The realization finally hits the woman, tears forming in her eyes. It wasn't a setup. It was payback for her actions against Hilam. The maid quickly withdraws after that, leaving Hilam and Luna alone in the room. Stroking the boy's head, she says that all that noise probably frightened him a bit, apologizing for it and affectionately calling him he. Noting how dirty the place was, Luna says they should go to her room. Picking the boy up in her arms, she walks down the mansion's corridors with him cradled against her. With a smile on her face, the protagonist thinks that from now on she will protect him, determined to ensure his happiness for the rest of his life. Arriving there and setting him down in the room, she asks the boy to take a nap. Hilam nods in agreement as Luna steps out. The protagonist considers his illness, noting that Hilam didn't need to get up just to answer her. Another maid of the mansion sees Luna and asks what brings her there. The woman's name is Jane, and she is the head maid of the mansion. Approaching, the protagonist asks a favor of her. Pointing out that her personal maid has just left the mansion, Luna asks Jane to spread a rumor that the ex-maid stole something from her mistress. Jane ponders for a moment, then agrees. Luna doesn't want that woman to go unpunished after harassing her favorite character. The young woman continues, saying that once that's done, the maid should give Hilam the best room in the mansion. And she adds coldly that from now on she won't tolerate any abuse directed at the boy, and that Jane must inform all the staff of this. The maid agrees and, bowing, promises to take care of it. Finally, Luna asks for the carriage to be readied. When Jane asks their destination, Luna says it's to the Huppert estate. She will visit Duke Lasius Huppert. The next day, leaving her mansion, Luna heads to the carriage. Meanwhile, Jane asks why she has so much luggage. Smiling, Luna replies that they can pretend it's just bait for some wild beast. The maid watches the carriage depart, wondering if the Viscountess will really be all right. After all, she wasn't even invited. In the book, titles like The Devil's Cold-Blooded Contractor and the description of a man who hated women so much he refused a marriage proposal from the Empire's own princess could easily describe Duke Huppert. Because he never attended high society gatherings, he gained a terrible reputation. But despite that, The original novel portrayed him as handsome and showered him with praise. Looking out the window, Luna thinks the Duke has no reason to see her, so she's prepared for a tense, hostile meeting. Yet, since he'll be Hillam's future godfather, she's willing to compromise a little. When they arrive, the protagonist steps down from the carriage, marveling at the grand mansion. Turning, she sees a guard approaching and confidently explains that she's here to meet Duke Huppert. When the guard asks if she has an appointment, she simply smiles and says yes. Just tell Lysias that Luna is here. Intrigued by her confidence, he says he'll open the gate once he reports to the Duke, asking her to wait. As he walks away, the guard thinks she looks like an angel who'd never tell a lie. Luna wonders if she'll have to wait days for a response. To her misfortune, a heavy rain begins to fall over the Huppert estate, but she waits patiently. Suddenly, a soldier arrives, calls her over, and covers her with an umbrella. He explains that His Grace requested her entry. Surprised by how easily she's granted access, Luna follows him inside. When she's announced, she's taken aback. Instead of a reception room, she's led straight to the Duke's private office. Her fear of entering a lion's den eases a bit when a man warmly greets her. Thus, Luna stands face to face with the man she sought, but to her surprise, she notices something. Contrary to his fierce lion reputation, Duke Huppert seems more like an enchanting cat. She suddenly understands why the imperial princess adored him. He shines like the sun itself. Noticing she's soaked from the rain, Huppert offers her his coat but immediately adopts a sarcastic tone, commenting on her boldness. Since she entered unannounced and used his name so casually, he wonders if they're close, or perhaps even courting. Luna recognizes his sarcasm and apologizes, explaining she thought the Duke wouldn't agree to a meeting otherwise. She then asks why he let her in despite knowing she was lying. Huppert admits he was intrigued by her behavior, noting that although many women have pursued him, she is the first to attempt such a bold trick. As he reaches out toward her face, he acknowledges her beauty. However, he soon asks if Luna came relying on that alone to persuade him. Then, with a smile, he says that if she doesn't want a scar on her lovely face, she should give him a more than satisfactory explanation. Despite the threat, the girl thinks he has a beautiful smile. Looking into his eyes, she realizes he is the same Duke Huppert from the book she read. Pointing out that she has a proposal for him, Luna asks if they might sit down, which the Duke quickly allows. In the original story, Lysias had no interest in women and even hated those who chased him, making her task risky if she failed to convince him. Huppert pours his tea into a cup and then asks what proposal the young woman has. Luckily, the protagonist has the correct information from the book in hand, and so she mentions the presence of a spy in the Huppert mansion, an allegation that makes Lysias freeze for a moment. She recalls that Lysias must be facing problems due to the recent loss of a diamond mine, commenting that she heard it was handed over to House Hillen. She further explains that the spy must be causing significant losses to House Huppert. Setting his cup down with a loud click, the Duke comments that she is indeed well informed, asking with a somber expression whether the spy also sold her that information. Luna says that isn't important now, offering instead to capture that little rat and to help him recover the diamond mine development business that Dawson Hillen had taken over. Huppert questions how she plans to accomplish all of that. In response, Luna opens her bag. Laying several papers in front of him, she says she is giving him her information and future plans, confidently asking him to read and decide for himself. Taking one of the papers, the Duke begins to read and is quickly surprised. After all, the documents contain detailed information based on Luna's knowledge of the story, including the spy's identity, his connections, the confidential data he possessed, and the future actions they could take. The protagonist watches all of this with a smile. She basically knows she will convince him, since it also describes a strategy to exploit House Hillen's weaknesses and recover the diamond mine. That wasn't difficult for her. Her only joy in her past life was reading her favorite romance over and over, always imagining which path would lead to Hylam's happiness. Her favorite character, Huppert, skeptical, questions the credibility of the information and its source. Refusing to reveal her source, the girl guarantees that the data is reliable and will not cause any loss if he trusts it. Recognizing her efforts, Lysias asks her motivation, presuming she must want something in return for all this. Luna says that is obvious. She plans to make a contract with the Duke in exchange for the information. Curious, he asks what kind of contract that would be. The protagonist points out that she wants a marriage, asking Huppert to sign a marriage contract with her, surprising him with the proposal. Luna clarifies that she is suggesting a contractual marriage for about 1 year. Reflecting on the book's plot, she remembers the story where Halem was abandoned by his stepmother, found by Lysias, and subsequently adopted as his son and heir. However, the protagonist cannot force herself to abandon Hillam, yet she also cannot deviate entirely from the novel's storyline. Aware that her current identity as Viscountess Massamel could trigger Hylam's trauma, and clutching her dress tightly, she decides to help him find Lysias and follow the original plot without causing further harm. Luna explains that for the Duke to regain the diamond mine, he will need House Massamel's approval. A goal the girl suggests is easily achieved, since with the marriage, Lysias would gain access to her name. As Huppert pages through the papers, Luna outlines a simple plan. They marry, secure the mine, and then divorce. The Duke falls silent for a moment. The protagonist assures him that in just 1 year she will leave his life with nothing, promising that the marriage will remain nominal, with no emotional involvement since neither of them has romantic feelings for the other. It's simply an arrangement. Huppert asks Luna if she truly harbors no personal feelings for him, to which she confidently replies no, even mentioning that they are both free to see other people. Her only requirement is that he be her husband on paper. Laughing, Lysias acknowledges that the contract seems advantageous and that he has nothing to lose. However, he expresses curiosity about why the girl would go to such lengths for a 1-year marriage agreement, finally questioning whether that really was all she wanted from him. Luna's real plan was to have Lysias adopt Hillam, however, revealing that now would only raise his suspicions. So she simply promises to reveal her other intentions later and offers to prove her credibility by finding the spy first, asking that they discuss the terms of their agreement in more detail afterward. Smiling, Huppert repeats the idea of finishing the conversation later, apparently talking to himself. Decided, the Duke says that sounds fine to him, and from now on they will be partners. Lysias offers her tea, noting its excellent fragrance, but the girl declines, explaining that she needs to return home because her child is waiting for her. With that, she takes her leave, finally bowing to the Count. As she departs, Huppert smiles, finding her intriguing, and surprised that the young woman isn't even afraid of him. Thinking over the marriage proposal, Lysias wonders if he should play along to see what she does next. Back at her mansion, Luna is greeted by her maid Jane, who informs her that she has prepared a new room for Hylam and asks if she would like to see it. The girl asks Jane to show her the way. Arriving at the room, Jane points out that she chose the sunniest chamber in the house, the very room where Hylam is sleeping. When asked, Jane explains that the boy has been asleep since taking the medicine, adding that it seems to be working well. Relieved, Luna voices her concern for his health, fearing it might be something more serious. In her mind, Jane is puzzled by her mistress's sudden change of attitude toward Hylam, remembering how Luna even dismissed the maid who knew all her preferences. All of this makes her wonder if Luna might be planning something. The Viscountess calls her, snapping Jane out of her thoughts. Luna asks if she may see Hylam more closely. Slightly surprised and laughing, Jane points out that she is his mother. Of course she may. Walking to the bed, the protagonist sits beside Hylam, pondering how such a sweet child could one day become a tyrant, and resolving that she would do anything to prevent it. Damping and wringing out a cloth with water, Luna places it on the boy's forehead. Jane, shocked, offers to tend to him. After all, she is the maid. But Luna insists that she would like to do it herself. Turning, Luna wonders what else she might do for him, then asks Jane if there is an oven available. In the kitchen, a little nervous, Jane asks if her mistress intends to cook for Hylam. Luna replies that she does. She wants to make something for him, but quickly reassures the maid that she'll only prepare a small snack. With a baking sheet in hand, Jane watches in surprise as Luna lays out a few ordinary treats. As the Viscountess is about to put them in the oven, a sudden series of thuds and bangs echoes through the kitchen. I swear, if this oven explodes too, it's just too much coincidence, Luna mutters. She asks Jane what happened, and the maid says she will go check. From the kitchen, Luna sees Jane speaking with an angry woman. While Jane explains that an appointment must be scheduled in advance, the woman loses her temper, shouting that this is her son's house and she shouldn't need to do that, ordering the maid to get out of her sight. Startled, Luna discovers that the woman is Countess Sasha Massamel, her mother-in-law in the original romance. Sasha is a greedy character who showed no interest in her son's death, but suddenly appeared when the inheritance of his fortune was being discussed. The protagonist resolves not to let Sasha take anything that rightfully belongs to Hillam. Later, Luna and Sasha are seated together in a room. Sasha criticizes the protagonist for dressing the way she is. After all, she's not wearing any black to show her mourning. The woman continues, questioning how Luna could be so shameless when her son died shortly after marrying her. The protagonist ignores her remarks as she sips her tea. In the book, Luna's late husband, Viscount Massamel, died of a sexually transmitted disease. But the girl also knows that the original Viscountess was a villain more than capable of killing her own husband, so Sasha's suspicion isn't unfounded. The protagonist asks why she came to the mansion, certain it wasn't just to say such things. Sasha, conceding the point, adds wryly that Luna is acting as if she's clever for a change. Finally, Sasha admits she's there to settle matters regarding her son's inheritance, insisting that Luna cannot continue living in such an extravagant mansion now that her son is dead. The protagonist calmly replies that she will no longer live there, but that regardless, the mansion belongs to her son Hillam and to her. This enrages Sasha. Screaming that the mansion belongs to House Masimel, she demands how a humble girl could dare claim something belonging to a count's family. Luna answers that the woman is coveting what belongs to her son and reveals that she has Viscount Masimel's will. Sasha, stunned, thinks this impossible, admitting she searched the entire mansion but failed to find it. Laughing, the protagonist knows the woman cares more about her son's fortune than his death. The reason Sasha couldn't find the will is simple. In the original story, as Viscount Masimel lay dying, Luna expressed her fear of being abandoned and cast out by the Countess should he die, noting that his mother hated her. So she had the Viscount write a will in his final moments, keeping it secretly hidden from everyone. Ironically, that will would allow the protagonist to pass the mansion to Hillam, even though she only obtained it through the villain's previous actions. Thus, the girl reveals that the will is at Archibald Bank, where the archive records remain, making its authenticity indisputable. Anxious, Sasha reacts to the mention of Archibald Bank, knowing its contents cannot be altered even by the imperial family. Luna offers to go check in person, or, failing that, to have the files sent directly to Sasha's house. Irritated, the woman turns and storms out of the mansion, slamming the door. Luna reflects on how easy it is to resolve things using the novel's information, finding it all very dull. Still, a peaceful resolution like this is far better than her past life. She could only endure all that suffering for Hillam, the book's main character, and so wishes to make him happy. Later, Luna and Hillam sit together at the table. In her mind, the girl can't help but be surprised by how sweet the boy is. He stares at her for a moment, freezing her with a startled expression. Then Hillam suddenly starts to cough. Startled, the protagonist asks if he's all right, suggesting he drink some milk. Crying, Hillam apologizes, asking if he made his mother lose her appetite. Confused, the girl doesn't understand, but he soon says that sitting across from her at the table might have disgusted her so much she couldn't eat. Luna realizes the boy thinks it's his fault he didn't have his soup, believing she was being insensitive. The protagonist concludes that if she continues to be the same Luna, she won't be able to make him happy, and so must show Hillam how she truly feels. Rising from the table, she assures him that he was not unpleasant and need not apologize. The boy hesitates, not quite understanding. She kneels on the floor next to his chair, feeling guilty and realizing she should have apologized sooner. She reflects on how Hillam was already hurt by Viscountess Masimel's neglect and by all the mistreatment he suffered. So how could she ever make him happy without first apologizing for all of it? Looking at the boy, Luna apologizes with a somber expression for her cold behavior and for ignoring the maid's abuses, and asks forgiveness for all the things that have hurt him. The boy already has tears in his eyes. Finally, Luna promises never to hurt him again and asks that, no matter how difficult it may be, he trust her just this once. All of this leaves the boy speechless. Although she knows Hillam won't open up just because she apologized, the girl only wants him to experience the affection he's never known. Promising to do everything possible for his happiness, Hillam timidly nods. With that, the protagonist pulls out a small package and asks the boy to accept it. When he asks what it is, Luna quickly says it's a gift for him. She brought some macarons and a bib. As she shows him the outfit, the protagonist explains she chose it because she thought it would suit him. When asked if he likes the gift, Hillam shyly says yes and immediately ties it around his neck. Clapping her hands, the protagonist says it looks great. The boy becomes a little bashful as Luna remarks how adorable he looks. Hillam doesn't know why his mother suddenly began treating him kindly, but in his heart he hopes it will last forever. Later, at the Huppert estate, Luna gently knocks on a door. With a loud crash, Lysias throws it open, surprising her. The girl explains that the situation was resolved faster than she expected, revealing that the spy disappeared immediately after his visit, wondering whether the spy was simply fast or highly perceptive. Despite that, Luna still managed to uncover some information about him, placing a paper on the table. As Lysias analyzed the records, he was impressed by the amount of detail concerning the spy's movements Luna shares that they should capture the spy immediately, noting that, although they have tracked his movements, he could escape at any moment. When Lysias asks what she would do next, the girl simply says that, of course, she would go after him and catch him. Observing her with a slight smile, Duke Huppert admits that it sounded fun, and thus he would accompany her. The protagonist questions whether Lysias might be too busy for this. And no matter how much he insists that he is free, the stack of papers and documents on his desk proves that Lysias was lying. However, since he insisted so much, Luna relents, allowing him to participate in her search for the spy. Finally, he asks where they should go. Now arriving at the location, they come across a casino. Huppert speculates that the spy probably did not come there to gamble, but rather to meet someone, which Luna agrees with. The girl then suggests that they should go to the VIP room on the second floor. But as they walked, someone recognized Duke Huppert, shocked by his presence. Lysias points out that he had some business on the second floor, asking if he was free to pass. The guard confirms that he was free, but asks who the woman accompanying him was. Pulling her close, the young man simply says that she was his wife. The guards bow and apologize for the inconvenience. The protagonist feels relieved, realizing that Huppert's company facilitated their access. Perhaps she could have been prevented from entering if she had come alone. Huppert asks why she did not open the door, but she hesitates. Asking for a moment, she wonders if she should handle the spy alone, recalling the events of the book. In the story, this spy caused significant damage to House Huppert by leaking confidential information, consequently leading to the family's decline, even losing part of its order of knights. At the moment when the house was near total ruin, Helam, who had been abandoned by Viscountess Massamel, appeared before him. That was how Lysias and Helam met, enabling the boy to become the future successor of House Huppert in the book. However, Luna believed that if she married Lysias, Helam would naturally become her adopted son, so it was unnecessary to let the spy continue causing damage. However, when the protagonist was about to open the door, Huppert stopped her, asking her to wait a moment. Suddenly, someone forcefully opened the door. Upon seeing the Duke outside, the man cursed and ran, colliding with the girl as he realized he had been discovered. Lysias warned the man that he should know running would not help desperate. He looked frantically in all directions, thinking of some way to escape the situation. Noticing Luna fallen, the man approached her, holding her by the collar of her dress. With a serious look, Huppert watched the scene unfold. The man then pressed a knife to her throat, shouting that if anyone came near, he would kill her. Huppert asked Luna to remain calm. The girl replied that she was fine. But smiling, the man questioned how Lysias could be so calm in this situation, claiming that he would kill her if he attacked. The spy assumed that he was somewhat cornered. Now that Lysias had discovered him, the man was certain the Duke would pursue him to hell to kill him. Despite this, he also realized that the girl must be very important to Lysias, since he was very quiet after Luna was taken hostage. Noticing Huppert's hesitation, he smiled, thinking that it was his chance to act and rid himself of him once and for all. The spy instructed Huppert to turn around and close his eyes. Huppert obeyed despite his reluctance. In his mind, the Duke knew that the man would try to kill him here and now. Finding it humiliating to give his life for a woman in this way, he still tried to devise some plan to get out of there alive. As the man approached, Lysias wondered if he should have let her get hurt a little instead of sacrificing himself so readily. But deep down, he knew that he wouldn't have it any other way. Pushing Luna aside, the man headed for Huppert. Irritated, the protagonist thought that she had no fear of the threats or the pain she might feel. Her father had made her go through that countless times in her past life. What really mattered to her now was to get rid of this spy so that Helam could be happy in the future. The man was already running at Lysias with the knife in hand, who was already thinking that he could stop him even if it meant sacrificing an arm to block the attack. However, the attack he had been waiting for never came. Startled, he turns around, only to see Luna again. She had stepped in front of the blow to protect him. Stunned, he asks why she did that. But just as the man was about to strike again, Huppert moves in and intervenes swiftly, grabbing the arm and subduing the man, throwing him to the ground to resolve the situation. Over the spy, Lysias then advises Luna to tend to her wound, assuring her that he could handle everything from there, and that watching what would come next would not be a pleasant sight. Throwing him to the ground, Lysias watched as the man trembled with fear. He kneels to get a closer look, noting that the spy had seemed so confident just a second ago, in stark contrast to his current position. Holding the man's face, Lysias asks if he had enjoyed selling his information. Ignoring the spy's desperate pleas, the Duke points out that as someone who made mistakes from the start, he shouldn't even beg for forgiveness. Then slapping him across the face, he asks whether the young man had not foreseen that this would happen if he sold his information. A dense, dark mist coils around Lysias's hand, and with a grave expression, he forces the man to reveal who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. warning that if he refused to speak, his life would end right there. After treating her own wounds by using her sleeve to stem the bleeding, Luna grows nervous, wondering if the Duke would be all right handling this alone. Under the pressure of Huppert's magic around his neck, the man suffered, struggling even to breathe, but he remained silent, his fear of exposing those behind it greater than his fear of death. If he were caught after confessing, his fate would be even worse. As memories of the man who ordered him flitted through his mind, the spy bit his own tongue, collapsing dead, drowned in his own blood. Cursing, Lasius grows frustrated. After all, he had not planned to kill him without obtaining the necessary information, nor had he thought the man might kill himself in this way. Sighing, he shifts his focus to Luna's wound. Later, Huppert tended to her arm, noting that luckily it wasn't too deep. Supposing that the spy had been startled by his sudden move. When Luna winced in pain, the Duke, with a somber look, asks why she had leapt into the path of the attack. Not knowing how to explain, since she couldn't say it was because of Hillam, she teases that she didn't want her beautiful face to bear any scars. Huppert pauses for a moment, then thanks her for her help, also asking her not to do something like that again. Luna questions why. After all, she helped catch the spy, adding that in the end what she did was beneficial. However, Lasius points out that strangely he didn't want to see her hurt, joking that perhaps it was because she was now his future wife. Luna is surprised and confused, wondering if Lasius had always acted that way. After all, she still remembered him described as cold-blooded and merciless. After finishing the treatment, Huppert says he's done, Luna's arm fully bandaged. As the girl thanks him, the Duke replies that it was the least he could do for her, since she got hurt on his behalf. Luna says she's grateful not only for that, but also for accompanying her to the gambling house and interrogating the spy. He simply says it was nothing. Watching her leave, Duke Lasius leans against the gate, lost in thought, finding it all very strange, smiling as he feels a new sensation at being praised by Luna. He had never felt that with any woman before, so why was he so excited when she did it? At the same time, some soldiers returning from training walk across the courtyard. A red-haired girl says it will be even more intense next time. One of the guards points to the gate, where they see the Duke smiling. The young man asks if perhaps something good had happened, speculating that maybe Lasius was planning to kill someone, thinking that otherwise he wouldn't be smiling like that, wishing the future deceased rest in peace. The girl suggests that could be the case. And as the soldiers pass, the Duke wonders what is wrong with him. He is confused by it all, since whenever he thought of that woman, a strange feeling arose. Sometime later, at the Massamel residence, Luna notices a dove landing on her window. Seeing the bird had a letter tied to its leg, someone had sent her a carrier pigeon. Surprised, she opens the letter, which reveals a message from Lasius, stating he was dying to see her again, missing her dearly, and asking if she would leave him waiting forever. The Duke asks when they will see each other. Luna cannot help but find the letter's content and choice of words odd. It even seemed like the Duke was a little puppy trying to act cute to get affection from its master. Laughing inwardly, she thinks she had already planned to visit him anyway. Then she sends him a reply, asking if they could meet in the evening. When the pigeon reaches Lasius, the young man quickly smiles. He sends back that he would love that, stating that Luna would be welcome at any time. After receiving the reply, Luna asks Jane to arrange a carriage for her, since she will go to the Huppert mansion. However, the maid notes that that may not be necessary and suggests she look out the window. Doing so, the protagonist notices a carriage filled with flowers. Jane explains that Duke Huppert had sent it a little while ago. Luna is surprised. After all, the carriage wasn't there just moments before. She also wonders if Lasius has really always been romantic deep in his heart. Asking Jane to tell the coachman she will be there soon, she goes to get ready for departure. Later, upon arriving at the location, Duke Huppert opens the carriage door and greets her, stating that he had been waiting for her. Lasius asks how her arm is, and Luna, with a smile, says that it was much better now. He says that he is relieved to hear that, expressing how anxious he was not to have heard any news from her. Laughing, the girl teases him, calling him a liar. But turning to Luna, Lasius replies that he was telling the truth, asking what in the world would make her think he was lying. Staring at him for a while, the protagonist comments that he looked like a little puppy she once had. Confused, Lasius asks if at least the dog was male. However, to his misfortune, she replies that it was a female, to which he jokingly says that Luna finds him hardly attractive as a man. In any case, the girl places the contract on the table, asking him to read it, offering to answer any questions Lasius might have. With a serious expression, the Duke looks at the paper. However, he quickly says that he did not want to talk about business. Confused, Luna asks what he would like to talk about. With a smile on his face, he asks what the girl has been doing. This leaves her confused, doubting whether he was really curious about that. But looking at the way Lysias smiled, the protagonist found herself unable to ignore his question. Finally, telling him that she had recently baked some cookies. Shocked, Lysias does not understand for a moment. Remembering Helam's reactions, the girl continues, pointing out that she had also made macarons and madeleines. Huppert asks if, because she loves sweets so much, she made them for herself. She replies that even though she likes them, she made them as a gift for someone. Hearing that, Lysias switches to jealous mode even before signing the marriage contract, repeating her phrase. Luna wonders mentally why he was acting that way. Pointing out that she did not remember receiving any gifts, the Duke asks to whom she had given them. Surprised, the girl asks if he likes sweets, offering to bring some next time she bakes. Insisting a bit more, Lysias again asks to whom she had given them. She nervously explains that she made them for he, using her affectionate nickname for Helam. Clenching his hand in anger and jealousy, the young man asks who he was. To which the protagonist quickly points out that it was her son Huppert is surprised for a moment, as she says that soon Helam would also be his son, since they were going to marry. Laughing at this little misunderstanding, Lysias says that she had indeed mentioned having an adopted son. The protagonist cannot help but question if he really is the Duke Huppert from the book. He seemed very different from what she remembered. Luna then decides to go back to talking about the contract. She explains that the term is 1 year, with the single condition that Lysias adopt Helam as his own son, treating him as his heir and educating him properly. Luna hopes that after a proper education, Helam will be able to manifest his ring as in the original story, and that Lysias will genuinely consider him as his own son as well. Duke Huppert agrees, saying that it sounds good. The girl then asks if he wanted to add any other condition, to which Huppert suggests that they remain exclusive to each other, not seeing anyone else during the contract term. Acting as a real couple, Luna is shocked and hesitates for a moment, but thinking to herself that she is not interested in other men anyway. She agrees to the proposal after signing the contract she had brought with her. The protagonist is surprised by Lysias, who tells her to sign another document. When asked about the content, the Duke simply states that it was the marriage record. Not fully understanding, she questions him on whether they really need to register their marriage with the Empire, since in any case they will have to present the divorce papers after a year. Lysias smiles and replies that if they are going to do that, they should do it correctly. He mentions that he had planned to remain single for the rest of his life, but now he has the chance to marry for a year, thanks to Luna. The girl becomes a bit apprehensive that this is the reason he wants to marry officially, but she ends up signing the marriage record anyway. They hear some muffled sounds in the distance, asking if he is in this room, and suddenly a woman enters, visibly irritated as she shouts Lysias's name. Both turn, surprised by the entrance. Furious, she asks if it is true that Lysias was going to marry without even informing her. Luna realizes that the woman is the Dowager Duchess, Caroline Huppert, Lysias's biological mother. Anxious, the protagonist wonders what she can do, fearing that if Caroline opposes it, the marriage will fail before it even begins. With an air of superiority, the woman asks Luna if she is the woman marrying her son. A little hesitant, the girl nods, apologizing for not having informed her in advance even though they have not yet signed the contract. Pointing out that there is no time for explanations, Caroline orders some people to enter. A group of servants enters the room, all holding a huge number of gifts. Confused, the protagonist cannot even form a sentence. Then the Countess states that they cannot welcome a new family member empty-handed, also asking the girl about her preferences for dresses and shoes. With a box in hand, the woman shows a necklace to Luna, hoping their tastes align. The woman notes that it is one of her favorites and would probably suit her complexion well. Still not fully understanding what is happening, the protagonist asks, "Why all this?" while Lysias sits in the background, quietly enjoying his tea. The woman says she feels very grateful to Luna. After all, Caroline was worried since her son refused every woman before him, saying he did not want to marry. She continues, pointing out that Lysias was probably just waiting for his perfect match to appear. The protagonist thanks Caroline for all her kindness. However hesitant, she says that His Grace, the Duke, has already given her more gifts than she deserves. The woman then asks why she refers to her future husband so formally, explaining that the girl should simply call him by his first name. Luna stares at him for a moment, until smiling, Lysias asks her to do just that. As the two smile, the protagonist finally realizes the mess she has gotten herself into. Thinking that nothing comes for free, she fears that Caroline might ask her for an improper favor in the future. To her surprise, the woman approaches her, explaining that she can probably guess what she was thinking. The Countess questions why Luna needs to calculate every step in her head, saying she gave her those gifts simply because she liked her, with no other intention. The protagonist does not understand this. After all, she came from humble origins, and this was not even her first marriage. This remark darkens the expressions of both listeners. Camerline adds that she does not care about her past or roots. She will naturally like the woman her son chooses to love, pointing out that that is how all mothers should feel about their children. She also says that if anyone dares to disrespect her and shame her for her origins, Luna should bring that person to her. After all, House Huppert never forgives those who scorn its family. This statement leaves the protagonist touched. Clenching her hand tighter, she wonders why everything is so easy in this world. In her past life, she did not have the luxury to even dream of marrying. The girl never had a mother, and her father always abused her. Changing the subject, the woman notes that the jewels before her are also beautiful, and that with so many options, she cannot decide which to give as a gift. Finally, she decides to give both. Seeing the scene before her, the protagonist thinks she does not mind that this world is so simple. Watching Luna's smile, Lucius can only blush, marveling at her beauty. He moves closer and sitting beside her, Lucius asks if the girl is tired, but she simply replies that she is fine. The protagonist notes that she simply wasn't made for this sort of thing. After all, she does not feel tired, just finds this new sensation strange. Wondering if she had had a mother. Would she love her unconditionally, just like Camerline did? Noticing Luna, the Duke asks what that was. Smiling, she replies that she was simply jealous of him. That remark leaves him confused. The girl continues, pointing out that she never had a real family, so she felt a bit jealous seeing him with such a loving mother. Smiling at that, Lucius says she will no longer feel that way, and holding her hand, he explains that soon they will be a family when they marry. Luna pauses for a second, but laughing she agrees with the Duke. It would be only for 1 year, but during that time she would finally have a family too. For the second time, Lucius cannot see her smile without being shaken. And holding her hand, the young man asks if they couldn't end up extending the contract, suggesting that a century would be ideal, saying he would be sad to be her family for just 1 year. Luna, wide-eyed, asks if he is joking, but he quickly denies it, stating he is serious. An awkward silence hangs in the air. Trying to break the mood, Luna withdraws Lucius's hand, attempting to change the subject. While sadness is visible in his eyes, the girl asks if he had any free time. Forcing a smile, Lucius says he has all the time she needs. Luna pulls out a letter, and when asked, she points out that it's an invitation from House Hillen. Trying to understand why the Duke acted as if he had never seen it before, she asks if Lucius also received one. Huppert hesitates for a moment before admitting that he did. Luna says that she needs to go to their party, then asks him to be her partner. Once again, the atmosphere turns tense and silence dominates the room. And when she asks him if he really had an invitation, the Duke's reaction is unusual. He moves closer and whispers something in her ear, leaving her shocked. Luna screams in disbelief when she learns that he threw the invitation away. Something so his style, actually. Calming herself, she assumes that Lucius did not intend to go to the party anyway. However, he openly declares that he will, leaving Luna confused. After all, he himself said he got rid of the invitation. Confused, the girl thinks that she doesn't want him to go just because of her and mentions that she could go with someone else. Sounding slightly irritated, Lucius asks who the protagonist would take if he didn't go. Thinking that maybe this upset him, Luna admits that she hasn't thought about it yet. Annoyed, Lucius says that rather than see someone else by her side, he would strongly prefer to go to the party himself. Just to confirm, the girl points out that then they will go together, and Huppert nods in agreement. Curious, she notices something in his hand and asks what it is. Lucius reveals a gun and places it on the table. The guy really doesn't joke on the job. He barely heard about his woman going with another to the party and already provided a pistol. Intrigued, Luna asks to examine it, which he promptly allows. As she handles the gun, she is amazed to see something she had only read about Lucius approaches, and asking if she is interested, offers her the chance to try shooting. She is initially surprised by his closeness, but she decides to ask if she could really do it. The Duke replies that she could shoot as much as she wanted. Aiming straight ahead with a serious expression, she finally pulls the trigger. Huppert praises her stance and notes that if the gun had been loaded, she would have shattered the window. He asks her when she learned to handle a gun. Nervously, the girl shares that she learned briefly in childhood. The protagonist remembers that she practiced with a gun in her past life. Her real intention was to be able to kill her abusive father someday, but she died before she had the chance to test her skills. Huppert explains that normally a ring is used to cover the barrel before firing. As he demonstrates, Luna recalls that a ring was like a donut-shaped substance created by conjurers. with strong destructive power and some consciousness. In theory, able to have infinite potential depending on its user. Lasius adds that rings return to the conjurer after hitting the target, making them more convenient than bullets. The girl nods in agreement. Luna remembers how rare it was for someone to be able to create rings. Recalling how Helam, in the original book, took 8 years to create only 3. As the Duke manifests his power, the protagonist can only watch in shock, wondering how the hell Duke Huppert could do that so easily. Lasius teases her, noting that she could barely take her eyes off his power, then asking if she preferred his rings to his face. The protagonist stops for a moment, and enjoying the sight of a downcast Lasius, the girl thinks he really does look like a little puppy. So she brings her hand to his head and begins to stroke him. Irritated, he asks if Luna is treating him like a dog, which the girl quickly confirms with a laugh. Despite his sulky expression, the young man's ears turned red from so much embarrassment. Back at her mansion, the protagonist anxiously asks where Helam was, and Jane informs her that the boy was still in his room. The maid then asks what her mistress had in hand. With a smile, Luna excitedly shares that she brought some treats for Helam. Realizing that the Viscountess had really been caring for Helam in recent days, Jane is relieved, thinking she wouldn't need to worry. However, the maid advises her not to give the boy too many sweets, as it could affect his health, making him more prone to illness. Luna agrees, stating that after she gives these, she will try to stop spoiling him so much. Sighing, the protagonist still thinks that Helam still has to eat more. Knocking on the door, Luna arrives at the boy's room. Surprised, Helam makes a loud noise and agitated asks her to wait a moment before entering. Timidly peeking through the door, the child says that his mother arrived very early today. Entering the room, the protagonist asks what he was doing, and nervously Helam says he hadn't done anything, raising all possible red flags. Feeling that the boy was acting odd, Luna wonders if she was imagining things. The girl shows her bag, saying she brought a bit of chocolate pudding for him, and asks if the boy would like to try it. Excited, he swallows hard in anticipation. Finding his reaction very cute, she invites him to sit down. Helam obeys eagerly. She says she bought the dessert at a very famous bakery, hoping it tastes good. Then Luna slides the plate toward him and asks him to go ahead and try it. As she sat down, the boy ate the pudding. Blushing, Helam exclaims that it was delicious. Staring at her for a moment, Helam timidly offers her a piece. Agreeing, Luna wonders if they were becoming a bit closer now. But despite that, the trembling in Helam's hands is visible. None of his traumas would be erased so quickly. The boy still couldn't fully trust her yet. Regardless of that, Helam was making an effort to open up to her, wondering how he could repay all of her courage. With the boy extending the spoon to her, Luna takes a bite of the pudding, and when she praises its flavor, Helam's face lights up with relief and happiness. The protagonist thinks that he was probably still afraid that his mother would refuse, and strengthening her determination, she would do everything so that the boy would be perfectly happy in a year. Finishing the treat, Luna asks him if he liked it, which Helam enthusiastically confirms. Laughing, she suggests they take a walk together, if Helam isn't busy, saying that they could go to his favorite swing. Helam's expression changes instantly, becoming completely frightened. Hesitant, the boy was clearly anxious. It so happens that in the original story, Viscountess Mazamel had destroyed it, calling him horrible. Unfortunately for Helam, that swing was one of his favorite things in the garden, but still his stepmother had ordered it to be broken. In the future, when the young man would become emperor, he would return to the mansion, rebuilding the swing, weaving it with large branches. All of this due to the difficulty of erasing the suffering from his childhood memories. Speaking to Helam, the protagonist reassures him, saying the swing was there again and invites him to see it. Surprised, Helam asks if it is true. The protagonist confirms, pointing out that they should go and check going to the garden. Helam ran excitedly toward the swing, while Luna followed at a distance. The protagonist asks what he thought and if he liked it. Radiant, the boy says he loved it. He quickly sits on the swing. Approaching, Luna calls his name. The boy responds with a smile on his face, with a sad expression. The girl says that she had treated him very badly after his father's death. She assures him that she would do her best so that Helam would never feel that fear again, and giving him his swing back was a way to apologize. Helam agrees, a bit shy, and mentions having a gift for her, which leaves the protagonist very surprised. However, when he stands to fetch it, the boy trips and falls off the swing. Worried, Luna runs to him, asking if he is okay. Helam insists that everything is fine, but the protagonist notices his attempt to hide the pain he felt. After all, she had done the same in her childhood too, always fearing to be punished for something. Luna reflects that she would probably want to see him happy at the end of the book, because she could see herself in him. She had always wanted something from her father. And hugging him lovingly, she reassures him that he no longer needs to hide the pain he felt, explaining that it wasn't his fault that it hurt, asking that he always tell her when he was hurt. While she held him in her arms, Hilum trembled and sobbed, finally releasing part of his true feelings. In her mind, the girl promised to give him all the love she had never received. While the boy still sniffled from crying, Luna simply found his reactions adorable, but then she suggests they go back to check the wound and make sure his knee wasn't too badly hurt. As they prepare to leave, Hilum hesitates and calls for her, intertwining his fingers in nervousness. Seeing this, Luna encourages him to speak, promising to do anything for him. Summoning his courage, the boy then shouts, asking his mother to hold his hand. She stops for a moment, processing what had just happened. But laughing, she quickly agrees, bringing a big smile to the boy's face. Holding hands, the two walk through the garden toward the mansion. Upon entering, Hilum nervously reveals that he did something for her in his room earlier. Shyly, the boy says he doesn't know if she would like it, but Luna assures him she would be happy with any gift from him, no matter what it was. Hilum then gives her a flower with a pink ribbon tied to it. The protagonist is moved by the gesture, realizing that was what he had been doing in secret. Hilum had prepared this gift for her, even though he did not fully trust her yet. Embarrassed, the boy bows slightly, saying his gift wasn't much compared to what she had done. But Luna quickly denies that idea, and smiling warmly, she expresses her gratitude. Once again, the boy calls on his mother. Despite that, he freezes before he can say what he wanted, leaving the protagonist a bit confused. Happy, the boy thinks his mother had smiled when receiving the gift he made, wishing to see her like that more often. On the Huppert estate, Lysias and Luna were seated. Fiddling with her things, the girl hands him the official contract. The Duke smiles and teases, joking that she decided to bring up the contract right away. As he sips his tea, Luna explains she does this because of its importance. Ignoring the comment, Duke Huppert remarks that she is finally drinking her tea, a remark that leaves her confused for a moment. Lysias points out she never drank tea before, no matter which tea or how famous it was. Thus, he notes that Luna really did like sweet things. And looking at her cup, the girl notices several sugar cubes floating, while Lysias says he prepared it especially for her. Luna acknowledges this, but quickly sets the cup on the table, making the Duke laugh. Serious, she comments that they should sign the contract right away. Agreeing, Lysias finally completes the record. After doing so, he assures her he will keep it safe. But Luna asks if it wouldn't be better to store it at Archibald Bank. Lysias then says his vault is the safest place in the entire empire. She agrees, but in exchange, she asks Lysias to answer a question. When the Duke asks her to go ahead, Luella mentions the rings they had spoken about before hesitant. She thinks that if Hilum learned to use his rings earlier than in the original book, he would face fewer difficulties, and no one in the world could have more information about that power than Lysias. So the girl asks how many people could use those rings. Claiming she was excited, Lysias begins to explain. And after a second of thought, he notes that most members of House Huppert are familiar with rings from birth, so most know how to wield them, though not all succeed. When the protagonist comments that some family members lack that ability, Lysias adds that those people were easily excluded from the family. Having received the title of Duke, Lysias should wield rings better than anyone else. She then asks Huppert to show the ring again. Reflecting on the story, Luna remembers Hilum's learning progress, noting that after 8 years of hard practice, he could use 3 rings and, as Emperor, could use up to 7. However, to her surprise, the man before her was completely off the charts, with rings appearing and disappearing in alarming numbers. Luna thinks she was not wrong after all. The girl asks if people outside House Huppert can also create rings, and when she receives an affirmative answer, she asks about the possible number of people with that power. Duke Huppert says he does not know for sure, although it shouldn't be a high number due mainly to the ring's sensitivity. Considering the idea of learning to use a ring to help Hilum, Luna asks if Lysias thought she could do that. The young man asks if she would like to receive some lessons. Surprised by the offer, the protagonist becomes curious. However, Lysias wants to impose a condition for it, and when she asks what it would be, the Duke smiles and gesturing says he would like to receive 1 kiss per day. Luna reacts coldly, staring at him in silence as if she were considering stabbing him the next second back at her mansion. The girl asks if that was supposed to be a joke, leaving Lysias in silence. Sighing, the Duke apologizes for it, suggesting that at least they could see each other a bit more, and she agrees. Luna points out that they could meet whenever Lysias was free. Lying, the Duke then asks if they could see each other every day, claiming he had plenty of free time in his schedule. Knowing that he was actually extremely busy, the protagonist changes the subject. She asks how many people in the mansion could control a ring. Lysias comments that only 3. They were Roxana Stur, Ludgar Eckhart, and Hizette. Drinking her tea, Luna thinks that if her memory serves her right, they were the ones who taught Hylam about rings. She then asks Duke Huppert to introduce her to those people. Lysias quickly refuses, and when asked why, he says he enjoyed his alone time with her and didn't want anything to ruin the mood. Smiling, the girl argues that she'll meet them eventually when they get married and prefers Huppert to introduce her properly. He blushes at the mention of marriage and ends up admitting defeat, pointing out that he never manages to win against her. Later, in the Huppert training grounds, the sound of blows rings in the air. Ludgar runs up to Roxana, holding a paper and asking if it's really true their master is going to marry. His sudden entrance disrupts her exercise, but he approaches anyway, insisting it must be false. In the letter, the Duke asks them to return to the mansion as soon as they read the message, informing them his marriage is the reason. Examining the seal, the woman confirms it is from House Huppert, while Ludgar remains stunned by the news, refusing to believe it. Roxana says she isn't sure, suggesting the marriage the Duke refers to might mean something else. Not the kind they know. Something like a metaphor or code, as if he now has a new ally. Ludgar agrees, nodding. Also confidently stating Huppert could never love anyone, asking if Roxana agrees. Both dismiss the idea of a conventional marriage, but soon hear footsteps approaching. It turns out Duke Huppert and Luna have arrived. Lysias smiles at the protagonist, pointing out 2 of the people she sought are already here, revealing they are his knights and ring users. Shocked, Ludgar and Roxana are amazed to realize the Duke is actually laughing. With one hand on Luna's shoulder, Lysias is a sight that leaves his knights speechless. Ludgar even asks if he's dreaming, but Roxana soon assures him it's real. With a gentle expression, Lysias approaches, saying he will introduce her to them. As the Duke pauses, the protagonist stares at them, remembering she heard one member named Hizette has silver hair, so by elimination they must be Ludgar and Roxana. Noticing her gaze, Lysias asks why she's staring like that, jealousy taking hold. He asks if she perhaps likes Ludgar, calling him a bastard in the process. Embarrassed, the protagonist denies it, claiming it's nothing of the sort and she's there only to get to know them. A bit pouty, the Duke wonders if all this is really necessary. And trying to relieve his stress, he suggests Luna refer to Ludgar as if he were a waiter, calling him, "You there?" And with a smile, Lysias says, from now on that will be his name. Then he finally introduces her to Roxana, captain of the knights. Terrified inside, Ludgar hopes the Duke isn't jealous of him. Later, Roxana and Ludgar were sitting in the courtyard. He asks her if, while he was out of state, something might have happened to their master. Really, Roxana questions if he thought that was even possible. After all, she had served him for about 10 years and still couldn't understand why he needed guards. Laughing at her, Ludgar jokes about the fact she only has 1 ring. Roxana gets furious, grabbing him by the collar and threatening to use that 1 ring to kill him today. She continues, asking if Ludgar had been away so long that he'd lost his senses, stating that some things shouldn't be mentioned. Fearing for his life, the man begs her to forgive him. Roxana then tells him to forget about it and continue with the report. Ludgar explains that he didn't find any traces of the shadows. Irritated, the woman punches a nearby beam. Growing suspicious, the captain asks if perhaps Ludgar had accidentally let them escape. A bit annoyed, he defends himself, stating that he searched thoroughly, using his rings for days. He then asks about the colorless child. Finally, Roxana asks if he was talking about Hizette. With perfect timing, someone arrives in the training area. The sound of footsteps echoes until the man's figure becomes visible. The woman then explains that, as he can see, Hizette has just returned without finding anything. Cursing, Ludgar realizes that all their work was in vain, leaving the white-haired man at a loss. At another moment, at a party in a grand hall at the Hillen family estate, Luna recalls having spent the last few days searching for and reading various messages in the mansion, trying to gather valuable information from nobles she didn't know well. However, in the midst of it all, there is an anonymous letter that seems strange to her. In it, someone asks her not to marry this man, stating that he does not deserve her curious. She wonders who could have sent it, since it seems more like a fan letter. Suddenly, a woman approaches and greets Luna. As the noblewoman smiles, Luna responds, calling her Edith Napelli and saying she is happy to see her. The noble asks the girl to call her only by her first name. Even as they speak, several voices can be heard around them. Luna recognizes Edith as a prominent figure in high society. The noble asks if she may question her about something, if it is not rude, and Luna gives permission. Edith then asks if the rumor is true that she is going to marry again. Luna had already anticipated this question, and with a calm smile, she affirms that it is true. The news causes whispers among the other ladies, who note that her ex-husband died recently and accuse her of trying anything to join high society. Someone even calls her pathetic. Luna comments on how well-informed Lady Edith must be to have heard the rumor already, suggesting she must be close to House Huppert Edith. Shocked, asks what she means by speaking about House Huppert becoming. Surprised to realize that apparently Luna is going to marry Duke Lysias Huppert. The other ladies dismiss the possibility, noting that the Duke even turned down a proposal from the Imperial Princess. They assert that Luna is bluffing since she does not answer the question directly. Edith finally intervenes, silencing them, stating that they are making Viscountess Mazimel uncomfortable, pointing out she should not be surprised. Edith says, Luna is attractive enough to make the Duke fall in love with her. She then approaches Luna and reinforces the compliment. Surprised by Edith's unexpected behavior, Luna wonders if this woman was really like that in the original book. As she moves away from the crowd, Luna thanks her for the help, but soon she apologizes, saying she must do something now. It turns out Luna is feeling something strange, thinking it's safer to keep her distance from Edith. Still at the party, the girl notices something. In the corner, she sees a red-haired man with the emblem of House Blake and suspects he may be Baron Doug Blake. Although not mentioned in the original book, his presence seems strangely familiar to her, even though she does not know why their eyes meet for a moment, and both shrink back. Realizing the man is approaching her, Luna becomes nervous. She is confused by this interaction, since in the original book, Baron Blake and Viscountess Mazimel hardly spoke. Greeting her awkwardly, the man asks if there is any chance they have met before. Trying to remain calm, Luna thinks of a way to handle the situation. Smiling, she says she is sure that is not the case. Indicating he must be mistaken, he bows, apologizing for the inconvenience. Turning away, the man leaves Luna, still disturbed, ponders the reason for this feeling of familiarity, speculating that maybe it is because she is the age of her biological father. Suddenly, someone takes her hand. When she turns around, she sees Duke Huppert kissing it. Shyly, she asks how he can do something like that in public. Lysias smiles and replies that he missed her, but she retorts that they saw each other the day before, when she was introduced to Roxana and Ludger. Moving even closer to her, Lysias comments that that was too long for him. Then he takes her hand, intertwining their fingers. The protagonist hesitates for a moment, but then thinks they might not be noticed since they are in the corner. But to her misfortune, they ended up attracting a crowd of onlookers. Nervous? She whispers that everyone there was staring at them. Indifferent. Lysias asks what the problem with that was. Not even bothering. The Duke reinforces that either way, she belonged to him. The spectators, especially the women, are shocked. While Edith tries to hide her expression with her fan, Ludger and Roxana, who were standing guard, nearly had a heart attack when they heard that, embarrassed, Luna turns red, asking him to go somewhere else. The young man agrees, but staring at her, Lysias asks her not to say that her ideal type is an older, burly, hairy man. Confused, Luna questions what he was talking about, but turning around she realizes that Baron Blake was still looking at them. Embarrassed, the man coughs. Lysias, smiling, mentions that it looked like she had been staring at that man for a while, and with an expression worthy of an American serial killer, he points out that apparently they had also chatted a bit. Luna then wonders if he was jealous of an old man laughing because she found it really funny, ignoring the 30 red flags from the Duke. When asked why she was laughing, she assures him that nothing happened with Baron Blake. And when the sulky Duke asks if she's sure, Luna can only laugh even more at his pointless worries. He holds her hand against his face, asking the girl to stop worrying about that kind of thing and give him a little more attention. There's no way to defend it. He really acted like a needy puppy. Later, while they were outside the ballroom, Luna asks why he was late today. Taking off his coat and covering her, Lysias just says there were some things he needed to do. When questioned, he just points out that he was looking for something, but his search apparently had no luck. The protagonist deduces that if Huppert was looking for something at this point in the story, it was probably the shadows. In the book, they were entities described as deteriorated ring users, commonly called holes, different from normal rings, which returned to the conjurer. The holes floated in the air, and as soon as they found a normal ring, they would absorb it, weakening them and reducing their power. This greatly worried the ring users, causing Hazet and Ludger to search for them for a long time. But it had never been an easy task. Feeling a little frustrated, she murmurs, realizing she hadn't seen Hazet that day either, but considers she would find him soon. While lost in thought, her attention shifts when she notices a lady with orange hair nearby. The protagonist recognizes her as Sinia Hillen. That woman would be a key player for Huppert to recover his mine. When Luna gets up to meet her, Lucius grabs her hand and asks where she's going. The girl explains that she needed to approach Sinia to help them recover the mine. Lucius stops her and asks a favor before she leaves. When she asks what it is, the Duke stands up, approaching her. Staring at her closely, Luna becomes confused. Then suddenly, Lucius asks her for a kiss. Not quite understanding, the girl wonders what was going on, asking if Lucius was being serious, her heart racing along with her anxiety. From the ballroom, Edith watches them through a window, visibly angry and questioning if Luna was marrying just for the spectacle or if she really loved Duke Huppert. She reflects on how the girl had changed. After all, just a short while ago, the word love could not be associated with Luna Massamel, finding her transformation amusing and admitting that she liked this version of Luna more. Taking a step toward the protagonist, Lucius approaches. But as he leans in to kiss her, he stops. Embarrassed, Luna had stopped him. Apologizing, she says she doesn't think she can do it. Pointing to Ludger, who was whistling nervously, she mentions that the soldier seemed to be looking for Huppert, explaining that they both had things to do. She says goodbye, also telling him that he could take his coat back. As she walks away, Lucius watches her leave without reacting. Approaching Sinia Hillen, Luna greets her politely, introducing herself with a formal greeting. The woman soon congratulates her on the upcoming marriage. She thanks her, but notices that the noblewoman is looking somewhere. Following her gaze, she sees a man, Dawson Hillen. The protagonist was sure there was a certain tension between them. Realizing that she apparently hated him, Luna is still surprised to notice that she didn't even try to hide her expression of disgust, even though their conversation was developing a bit. And despite wanting to talk more with the woman, Luna realizes Sinia seemed more focused on observing Dawson. Trying to get back to talking with Luna, the noble comments about her second marriage, hinting that it must be with Duke Huppert. Surprised, the protagonist asks how she had found out. Sinia replies that Lucius's look had given everything away. After all, he was watching from afar with his sad puppy face. Embarrassed and blushing at that, the girl asks if they could talk for a moment. The noblewoman questions whether her matters were really with her and not with Dawson. But the girl says it was Sinia she truly wanted to talk to. So the woman asks the protagonist to follow her. In another room alone, Sinia asks what topic Viscountess Mazamel would like to discuss with her, asking the noble to call her by her first name. Luna continues, directly asking if she'd like to become the head of her house. Surprised, the woman questions what she was planning with that, and nervously asks why she brought her there. Luna reassures her, asking her to calm down. Explaining that she wanted to bet on her, she says she would be more fit as head of House Hillen. Still confused, the noble asks for some time to think about it, putting her teacup back on the saucer. Sinia was skeptical about all of this, asking if, even if Luna had told the truth, she actually had the power to fulfill such a promise of making her the head of her house. The girl confidently confirms, nodding her head and explaining that she knew what she meant, then committing to giving Sinia the power she so desired. Surprised but intrigued, the noble agrees to listen and asks about the conditions to help her, smiling. The protagonist demands the Black Diamond Mine, which Dawson controls. After all, once she became the leader of the house, the mine would belong to Sinia. With that, Luna promises to elevate her to the top of House Hillen in just 1 year. At first, the woman laughs, but impressed, she agrees. And, calling her Luna, they shake hands. Back at the party, Ludger shouts nervously for Huppert, who seemed indifferent. On the verge of tears, the soldier questions whether his master was even listening to him. Annoyed, Lucius responds that he wasn't, stating that he didn't want to hear anything from someone who had disrupted his time with Luna. Shocked, Ludger tries to argue, but Lucius quickly turns his face, noticing something strange. Seriously, he calls his soldier, telling Ludger to go after Roxana because he had found a distorted ring. He asks his master if he wouldn't like him to go along too, but Lucius says Roxana would be enough, and with a dark expression, he also instructs Ludger to take Luna home when she returns. Obeying, Ludger bows, stating that he would carry out his orders. Back at the party, Luna asks the knight where the Duke was. Ludger explains that Huppert had to step out briefly and ordered them to return home first. The soldier also asks her to treat them casually. Smiling, the girl agrees to do so. But in her mind, the protagonist still wondered what had caused Huppert's sudden departure, concluding that something urgent had happened, likely related to tracking a shadow. While the girl questioned whether he would be all right, Ludger reassures her that Huppert had Roxana by his side. He points out that ideally, Hizette would be there alongside the Duke too, but he had the role of escorting her, and Hizette hadn't shown up at the party. Luna nods, although her expression was a bit downcast. Ludger also mentions that Hizette is one of his fellow knights. The girl comments that the day they met, he wasn't present. The knight says that he was busy on a trip at the time. Intrigued, Luna remembers that Hizette was her favorite character in the novel after Hylam, and she was quite disappointed not to have seen him the other day. The girl then asks if Ludger could introduce her to him later, saying she'd like to meet him. Later, Hizette was standing in his room when he notices someone knocking at his door. Opening the door without even waiting for an answer, Ludger barges in shouting, complaining that he was holed up in his room again. Annoyed by the intrusion, Hizette responds with irony, asking if by any chance he'd gotten lost, even summoning his rings, throwing them at Ludger, who screams in fear, thinking he was trying to kill him. Hizette points out that he was disturbing his thoughts, and when asked what he was thinking about, he explains that Ludger didn't need to know jokingly. Ludger says he was just there alone to torture himself. Denying he was torturing himself, he says he's reflecting on what he might have missed. Ludger, amused, encourages him to come out, hinting that Hizette would be surprised to see who he brought along. Indifferent, the knight points out that he didn't care, sending another ring toward Ludger, who begged him not to get any closer. Hizette immediately senses an unknown presence. Curious, yet indifferent, he asks Ludger who had come with him. Ludger, clearly already fearing for his life, assures him it's someone who will surprise him. Excited and with a smile on her face, Luna comments that he must be Hizette. Her heart races as she recognizes him, remembering his role as a teacher and older brother to Hillam. She couldn't help but like him. After all, he had helped her favorite character, ignoring her. Hizette questions what he had behind his back. Noticing this, Ludger complains to him, pointing out that his life would become much more difficult if he kept being rude to the lady in front of him. Still processing that she was ignored by one of her favorite characters, the girl stayed silent. But trying to regain her composure, she steps forward, stating it was a pleasure to meet him. Luna continues, introducing herself and explaining that she would soon be marrying his master. Hizette greets her politely, but far more like a robot than a human, quickly shaking her hand. The knight quickly changes the focus, asking if the Duke had returned. Ludger points out that he hadn't, explaining that Huppert discovered a contaminated ring during the party and was investigating it alongside Roxana. Seeing Hizette looking downcast, Ludger laughs and points at him, joking that his mission was different. Intrigued, the knight asks if he really had one. Ludger says yes, and his new mission was to walk around the mansion with Lady Luna. A little later, Hizette approaches, apologizing for keeping her waiting. He was wearing his official clothing as the Duke's knight. Luna quickly reassures him that he hadn't taken that long, while Ludger tried, and failed miserably, to hold back his laughter in the background. The protagonist recalls that Ludger had only said he was ordered to walk and relax for failing his previous mission. Smiling excitedly, she notices how perfectly Hizette matched his description from the original story, now outside the mansion. As they walk together, Luna wonders what she should say to him. After all, she never thought it would be this awkward. She then asks if Lysias was always that busy. Hizette confirms that his master was probably busier than most knights of his order. Curious, the protagonist asks what he did. The knight says that in his mission, he researched the black mana stone mine that belonged to House Huppert. The girl remembers that it was a very valuable resource, but Hizette explains that the mine contained only a small amount of buried mana stones, with its largest section mostly made up of piles of coal. Continuing, he points out that mana stones aren't easily compatible with rings, so they weren't used directly, but were part of a costly and time-consuming sorting process that made the mines more of a hassle than a benefit. Thinking for a while, Luna gets an idea. After all, if the problem was the mana stones, she might be useful. Noticing her expression, the knight asks if something good had happened, to which Luna replies yes, saying she feels that she'll soon be able to give Lysias a great gift. Suddenly, Hizette freezes for a second and turns, looking disturbed. When Luna asks what's wrong, he says it was nothing, and that he must have just seen things for a moment. Worried, the protagonist asks if it's because of his fatigue, thinking she may have made him walk too long. Despite denying it, Hizette clenches his fist tightly, apparently bothered by something. A few days later, Luna meets with her ex-mother-in-law, Sasha. She asks if the girl had taken her son's will. Sasha confidently assumes it was all just a bluff, asking Luna to show it. When she places it on the table, Sasha grabs it in the blink of an eye, her rage visible to everyone. Trembling as she reads, the woman says it was impossible. Tearing the document in anger, she accuses Luna of forging it and trying to steal the mansion just like she had infiltrated the family. The protagonist calmly reveals that the torn document was indeed a fake, pointing out that the original was in her possession. Offering to show the archived record at the Archibald Bank furious and insulted, Sasha complains about Luna belittling her. After the Countess curses at her, the protagonist shows a minimal reaction. And with a serious expression, Luna points out that Sasha probably knew who she was going to marry. Not understanding, the woman asks what she meant by that. The protagonist declares that she will soon become Duchess Luna Huppert, and stating that Sasha was merely a countess, the woman hesitates. Luna adds, ordering her to treat her with the proper respect owed to a duchess, someone superior to her Sasha. Although shocked and furious inside, wonders how the hell the girl managed to seduce Duke Huppert. But despite that, in her eyes, this brat in front of her wasn't worth the risk of antagonizing such a powerful house. Luna then proposes a deal with the Countess. Noticing Sasha's behavioral change so quickly, the girl can't help but chuckle a bit. She explains that she wanted two things. First, the Masamel House pass that allows direct navigation to the Nixon Kingdom, and second, Hylam's custody. Sasha, underestimating the value of the requests, considers them insignificant. After all, only House Hillen traded with the Nixon Kingdom, and Hylam, being a weak and timid boy, was of no use to her. Luna still assures her that she would offer fair compensation for those items. Sasha, although not knowing what she wanted with all that, thinks of pretending to hesitate to squeeze a better deal. She claims she didn't feel comfortable handing over the pass and Hylam's custody just like that. Asking what she would get in return, Luna calmly replies that she wasn't sure. Thinking for a moment, getting an idea, she points out that House Huppert had just acquired a black mana stone mine. So, Luna asks if that would be enough as a bargaining chip. Sasha is shocked but quickly hides her excitement, recognizing the rarity and immense value of the mine, thinking the girl was a complete idiot for not realizing what she was giving up. When Luna asks if they had a deal, Sasha agrees eagerly, hurriedly ordering a maid to bring the contract papers. Meanwhile, the protagonist just smiled confidently. Later, the girl was sitting at her desk, thinking that the urgent matters were finally resolved. But she still wondered how she would inform Hylam about her second marriage. She imagines different scenarios in her head. In one, she would introduce Hylam to Huppert directly, saying he would get a new father. Realizing that was awful, she quickly dismisses the idea. In another, with tears in her eyes, she apologizes to Hylam, admitting her past mistakes and pointing out that the boy probably wouldn't want to live with her anymore. Then Luna would say she found a father who was even cooler, also adding that in a year the boy wouldn't have to worry about seeing her anymore. Frustrated, the girl thinks that sounded completely senseless. Although everything had gone well so far, Luna felt like this situation seemed like a real challenge. Deciding not to overthink it, she concludes that honesty might be the best approach later. Luna waited in a room, asking Hylam to sit down. The boy's eyes immediately go to the cake on the table, asking if he could eat it. She says she had made it especially for him, and that he should enjoy it as much as he could. Pointing to a plate, she hands him a slice of cake. While Hylam ate excitedly, his mother was happy to see him happy. She had made that cake in case he got too shocked by the news of the marriage. However, when she notices chocolate on his face, Luna warns him, then reaches out to wipe it. But instinctively, the boy flinches. The expression of surprise was clear on her face. Even all her effort wasn't enough to erase everything Hylam had been through. At that moment, the boy was trembling with anxiety, his traumas still present in his mind. Trying to ease the tension, she apologizes, telling him she won't touch him. Offering him a handkerchief, Luna asks if he'd like to wipe himself. However, when the boy sees the embroidered message, "Be happy, Hylam," on the handkerchief, he pauses for a second, then suddenly bursts into tears. The protagonist is shocked and asks what's wrong. Hylam, still crying, asks why she's being so kind now after everything she had done. After all this time, the Viscountess had been cruel to him. Luna realizes his confusion. Whether she liked it or not, the boy had no knowledge of his stepmother's soul having changed, and that would always come back. With her hand on her face, she apologizes again. Luna explains that when her husband died, she lost her mind from the shock and promises never to treat him the same way again. Hylam asks if she was being serious. Lifting him in her arms, she says that it was obvious. She then hugs him, holding him in her lap while the boy cried. A little later, with Hylam more stable, Luna says that she has something important to share with him. She informs him that soon they'll have a new family, but the boy doesn't understand at first. So she explains that she's going to marry someone who will be a great father to him. She reassures him that the man is very kind and will treat him well, but tells him to take his time and let her know if he doesn't want a new father. Luna says she'll give him time to think about it. Nodding his head, Halem says he liked the idea, hoping his new father would be as kind as she was now. The boy claims that his real father was never very interested in him to begin with. The protagonist assures him that his new father would care and take care of everything for his happiness, while thinking that Duke Lysias was very different from Viscountess Mazimel and her husband. She then says that if everything was okay for Halem, they should go visit him together. In the carriage, Luna asks the boy if he was nervous. Stammering a bit, Halem tries to say that he was fine, failing hard to hide his true feelings. His legs and arms were still trembling a little. The girl always thought his nervousness was adorable. Smiling, she tells him they had arrived at the location. Luna helps Halem down from the carriage. The coachman mysteriously non-existent. Watching the scene, Lysias comments that it was a very sweet sight to see nervous. Halem looks at the man, remembering his mother told him his future stepfather was a kind person. Getting closer, Lysias says with jealousy that he wished she'd treat him like that too, while the boy wonders if that's what kindness means. Inside Hubert Mansion, an immense amount of sweets was laid out on the table. While the butlers served them, Halem's anxiety was clear, and whispering to his mother, he says the chair is too tall. She offers to let him sit on her lap, but the boy tries to refuse, stating that it wouldn't be good manners. Reassuring him, Luna points out that he could do whatever made him feel more comfortable. And holding him, the girl places him in her lap, asking how he was now. Halem timidly admitted that he was better. Noticing Lysias's gaze, she asks if by chance the Duke had done anything. Huppert smiles and denies it, and Luna suggests she must be imagining things. Despite that, Halem gets nervous when Lysias looks at him with a stern and scary expression. Meanwhile, he worried that the Duke might think he was rude, or maybe already didn't like him. Noticing his discomfort, his mother asks if something was wrong, but he quickly replies that it was nothing. Lysias then greets him, the boy timidly responding. Next, the Duke tells Luna that he wanted to get closer to the boy. With that, she expresses her hopes that the two would get along well. Lysias comments that since they were talking about it, he suggests that Halem sit on his lap for a bit, pointing out that it would make it easier for them to grow closer. Very normal thing to do after knowing a kid for 10 seconds. She thinks for a while, but Lysias reassures her that he was always very good at everything he did. Luna agrees, as long as Halem feels comfortable, asking him to say so if he doesn't want to. Though hesitant and anxious, Halem remembers his mother's reassurance that Huppert is kind. Besides, the man really seemed to like his mother. So despite his thoughts, he decides to give them a chance, telling his mother he didn't mind. Lysias tells him to come closer to his father, a slightly macabre line, to be honest. When the boy gets closer, Lysias picks him up in his arms. Luna asks if he happened to have any experience with children, which Lysias denies while laughing. While the girl is confused, he reassures her, pointing out that he really was good at everything he did. The Duke asks if his view was better now, telling him to let him know what he'd like to eat. Holding a plate, Lysias comments that he heard chocolate macarons were one of his favorite sweets. Halem, though shy, thanks him and starts savoring the sweets. The protagonist thinks the Duke really looked like a father in that moment, not to mention they were strangely similar. Luna comments that the two even looked like father and son. Jokingly, Lysias asks if that's not what they were. After all, they really would become that, from now on. Smiling, the girl comments that he was right. Helping him clean up, the Duke says he also heard he liked pudding, and that if he wanted, he could have ice cream too. Let's pretend ice cream makes sense in a medieval setting. The protagonist watched relieved, realizing that he'd probably like his future father. After the meal, Halem falls asleep in Huppert's lap, who jokes that his son must be feeling tired. Luna realizes Lysias had handled it quite easily, asking if they could let him sleep comfortably for a while. The Duke agrees, and handing Halem over to a maid, he suggests she let him sleep in his room. With that, he invites Luna for a walk while the boy took a nap. Outside, Luna and Lysias walk together. The Count asks what her favorite flower is, saying he'll plant it in the garden. Thinking, the girl asks if instead they could have a swing. When asked, she explains that she had even made one herself. Happy to see her smile, Lysias agrees to the request. She thanks him, pointing out that Halem would be very pleased with it. Realizing the swing was for the boy and not for Luna, his expression shifts a bit, but seeing her smile, his worries disappear. He asks if Luna liked the garden, with her mentioning that it looked a bit different from the one she walked in with. Hisette. Little did the girl know her innocent comment would end a poor man's life. Pausing for a moment, the most jealous being in the universe, aka Lysias, asks if she had by chance walked alone with Hizette. Turning and smiling, the girl asks if he didn't know, explaining that Ludger ordered Hizette to accompany her. Forcing a short laugh, Lysias tries to seem calm, commenting while laughing that of course he knew Ludger was behind it. Despite the act, his hatred was so deep he started releasing his rings suddenly, scaring Luna, joking. He says he was just nervous from being beside her, also pointing out that they were so close their hands were touching. Surprised, Luna thinks they had started walking quite far apart. Taking a step back, the girl thinks that distance would do just fine. Lysias asks if she was tired of walking, suggesting a break, then also mentioning that the garden had a secret area very close by. Excited, the protagonist remembers she read about this place in the book. In the original story, Hillam tried tirelessly to manifest a ring, but often failed in the process. And whenever that happened, he visited a specific place in the mansion's garden to strengthen his resolve and hold back his tears. She was sure it was this place, as it had been described the same way. Excited, she asked Lysias to follow her as she runs into the garden, making him laugh. Upon arriving, Luna says it was adorable and asks who had requested the design that way. Huppert explains that the one responsible was his mother and points to the seat in the area. Luna recognizes it as the bench Hillam used in the book, but hesitates to sit alone. After all, there was only one seat. Lysias sits on the bench. She asks if he wouldn't let her sit, finding his behavior strange. But the Duke quickly denies patting his lap. Lysias says she could sit there. Despite protesting that she wasn't a child, the Duke pulls her hand. Calling her, she obeys timidly and sits on his lap. Huppert expresses his happiness, telling her he feels lucky to have her, running his hand along her neck. In the end, she realizes she now had a necklace on it. Surprised, Luna asks what that was. Resting his head on her, Lysias says it was a wedding gift, explaining he was giving it to her so she would adore him. She notices a ring inside the diamond and wonders how he managed to put it there. When Huppert asks if she liked it, Luna responds excitedly, saying she loved the gift. Standing up, she reminds him of his promise to teach her how to make a ring. Lysias affectionately comments that he remembers every conversation they've had, so of course he still remembered the promise. Freezing, the girl was surprised by how casually he could say that sort of thing, without even blinking. The protagonist then asks what color he thinks her manifested ring would be. Smiling, Lysias says he wasn't sure but hoped it would be the same color as his. The girl eagerly asks him to teach her the process of creating rings still today. The Duke agrees, saying he'll do it if that's her wish. Later that night, in Huppert's office, Lysias admits he's never taught anyone before, and so he isn't sure if he'll do a good job. Luna reassures him, saying that if he fails, it'll be her fault for being a bad student. Determined, he promises to try his best so she won't be a bad student. Then, Lysias presents her with a weapon as a second gift for her. Thinking she's getting too many gifts today, the protagonist decides she'll bake some cookies as thanks later. Seated, Lysias reveals he's always known how to handle rings since birth, suggesting Hizette might be a better teacher. However, seriously, he firmly points out that he doesn't want anyone else teaching her, leaving Luna nervous and intrigued by his reluctance to let her interact with the knights. He then begins the lesson, explaining how to use a ring instead of a bullet with the pistol, instructing her to send the ring through the weapon and says that's all there is to it. Confused, the girl asks if that's really all, to which he confirms and encourages her to try. When she mentions she doesn't even know how to summon a ring, Lysias replies that she'll have to figure that out on her own, and suggests she start by simply shooting, since that might help her get the hang of it. She reflects on how Hillam took 8 years to create his first ring, even with the knight's help. Doubting her ability, she decides to try and pulls the trigger. After all, it wouldn't hurt to try aiming. She finally pulls the trigger. To her shock, she manages to summon a ring on her first try, causing a huge golden shot from the barrel of the weapon. This leaves the Duke in disbelief. Surprised, she could barely believe it herself, wondering why everything seems to be going so smoothly. The next day, at the Massamel House mansion, Luna feels uneasy thinking about how things have been flowing without issues. With events diverging from the original book and problems resolving so quickly, she worries this might be the calm before the storm. She had even managed to summon a ring just recently. Suddenly, Jane bursts into the room shouting. Startled, the protagonist asks why she seems so shocked. Jane stammered nervously about His Majesty, when suddenly a man appears, shoving Jane aside. Exuding a sinister aura, he calls the protagonist by name, announcing with a smile that he's come to take Luna with him. Even though she was sweating from nervousness, Luna maintains composure and greets him with a formal bow, addressing him as the son of the Empire. The man smiles, and with irony calls her formal greeting boring, raising his hand. He approaches, observing her closely and commenting that she looks like a kitten of his that ran away a few years ago. The Imperial family member then says he'll decide what to do with the runaway cat later. Confused, the girl doesn't understand what he means. Thinking to herself, she questions why he's calling her that way, doubting whether the original Luna could have had any interaction with him. She remembers Enrique as the emperor and villain of the book, a shadow who manipulated corrupted rings and opposed Lachias and Hillam. However, the story never mentioned any personal connection between Enrique and Luna. The man pulls her close and stares at her, commenting how much prettier she's gotten since the last time he saw her. Luna is caught off guard and replies that she doesn't understand what he's talking about. But before she can react, Enrique suddenly lifts her and holds her in his arms. Frightened, the girl asks him to let her go immediately. Enrique refuses, stating that he's not here to escort her like a gentleman, but to kidnap her. In an office, Luna sits nervously trying to process the situation, not knowing exactly what would happen to her now that she allowed herself to be captured. She needed to figure out what kind of relationship Enrique had with the former Viscountess. Since the man said she had run away, Luna believed that relationship wasn't very friendly. Enrique offers her a cup of tea, thinking of acting like she didn't know him. She politely refuses, saying she didn't care much for floral teas. Smiling, Enrique asks if that's all. Suddenly getting closer, he asks to take a look at something. Touching her face, he invokes his magic, revealing a corrupted ring. Luna didn't understand his intentions by showing her that, suddenly, Enrique throws the ring in her direction. Afraid, the protagonist shrinks back. However, the hole fixes itself around her hand. With a frightening expression, the Emperor states that it happened just as he had predicted. Luna realizes that this man already knew she could manipulate rings too. In the book, a deteriorated ring always followed a pure ring, and Enrique's actions suggested that the original Viscountess Mazimel could also use a ring. Frightened, the protagonist realizes the Emperor may have used the Viscountess to purify her. Something not mentioned in the novel, Enrique was not well positioned in the line of succession in the story. But regardless, he managed to gain great power through the support of the rings, eventually ascending to the throne. The protagonist wondered how he managed to convince others he was a user of pure rings, deducing that he must have exploited Viscountess Mazimel and used her rings instead of his own. The book mentioned that only rare individuals were chosen by the ring, and Enrique could have used her for his benefit once he discovered her secret. However, the Viscountess wasn't someone who would let herself be used by the Emperor. So perhaps her rushed marriage to the Viscount was her attempt to avoid being used by Enrique, since having a husband would make it socially unacceptable for Enrique to pursue and visit her frequently. But with Viscount Mazimel now dead, Enrique had no more obstacles, leading to his bold actions in kidnapping her like this. Interrupting her thoughts, Enrique directs his attention to her hand. Luna anxiously notices that the hole is beginning to be purified. Enrique comments that her ring still remembers him. She realizes Enrique must have been desperate and was likely purifying his ring for the first time in a long while. If she stayed any longer, she might never be able to leave, trying to say goodbye. However, the Emperor interrupts her harshly, saying they were not done yet, and grabbing her wrist. He asks if Luna had become rude now that she had turned into a stray cat. Frightened, the girl responds firmly that she wasn't his pet. Quickly apologizing, Enrique asks if she was happy now. He states that she was no longer his little cat, but even so, he would never let her go again. The Emperor speculates that she might have used Duke Lacius to escape or had some other plan in mind. But highlighting Lacius's reputation for not being interested in women, Enrique insists there's no way Lacius truly loved her, suggesting that she proposed a contractual marriage just to remarry and secure her freedom. Holding her hand, Enrique claims to be the only one who truly loved her. Feeling a chill, Luna recognizes that Enrique is only after the ring's power, wondering why people like him always talked about love. Memories of her past life surfaced. Her father telling her he only did everything out of love for her, claiming no one else in the world cared about her as much as he did. The protagonist wondered if she was destined to spend her entire existence suffering from people trying to take advantage of her. However, a glimpse of Lycius passes before her eyes, his sweet memories reinforcing that there were still people who truly cared about her. Finding her determination, Luna pulls her hand away from Enrique's grip, stating she disagreed with him. Seeing the girl smile, the Emperor doesn't understand. She points out that she really did have someone who loved her, and that someone was Duke Lycius. She bows and politely says goodbye. Enrique laughs but says she had won. Ignoring this, the Emperor offers her the thing she's always wanted, as long as she stopped being angry with him. Luna realizes Enrique still didn't intend to take her seriously, so she refuses, stating she has no reason to accept anything from him and doesn't even want it. When he was about to confront her, a loud noise comes from the door, the sound of guards yelling that no one could enter without permission. Confused, the Emperor doesn't understand what's going on. With a bang, Duke Huppert bursts through the door. The protagonist is surprised by his sudden appearance, wondering how he knew where she was. Asking what the girl was doing here, Lysias expresses his concern. Relieved by his arrival, Luna looks at the Emperor. She takes the opportunity to show Enrique how close she is to Lysias. Linking her arms with his and smiling, Lysias hesitates at this gesture, not used to such closeness. Enrique, visibly irritated, confronts Lysias, asking if he hadn't noticed the Emperor himself was standing there. Sarcastically, Lysias asks if he'd been there the whole time. The Emperor accuses him of being quite rude, but Lysias retorts, after all, it was Enrique who dragged his future wife to that place, so he wasn't one to talk about rudeness. He reminds the Emperor of the long-standing relationship between the imperial family and House Huppert, and warns him not to push things. Otherwise, Lysias would sever those ties himself. He also points out that if this happens again, they won't be facing each other in formal wear, threatening the possibility of real conflict. With that, the two turn and begin to leave the place, while the Emperor holds back in frustration. Back in the carriage, Luna wonders what the thing Viscountess Mazimel wanted was, but it would probably be an obstacle for her. In the future, Lysias gently places his hand on Luna's face. She asks what that was, and he replies that there was something on her face. Wondering if maybe Enrique's ring contamination was still on her face, she doesn't realize Lysias's true intentions. He asks what she and the Emperor talked about, but Luna says she herself didn't understand much of what he said. Getting closer, he says that next time, she can just shoot him, and Lysias will handle the rest. Not understanding his intentions, she asks why he would do that for her. A little embarrassed. He smiles and says, it's because she's his wife. Innocently, Luna says that even so. She's only his wife by contract and for 1 year, but he says they're still husband and wife. Smiling, Lysias says that because of that, he wants to love his wife properly while the contract lasts. Embarrassed by his sudden words, Luna changes the subject and asks how he knew she was at the Imperial Palace. Pointing to the necklace, Lysias says he had a feeling something bad was happening with it, so he went to the quarters to find her. Luna finally realizes that Lysias's ring and the necklace react to each other, and that's how he found her. Finishing what he was saying, Lysias says Luna's maid told him what had happened. Either way, Enrique Archibald was the shadow he'd been looking for, but apparently he was right in front of him. Luna remembers that in the novel, Lysias also discovered who the shadow was, but he had to finish everything without any reward, precisely because of the deal the Imperial family and the Huppert family made a long time ago. Instead of the royal family annihilating the Huppert family, which was a major threat, they decided to unite. As a result, Archibald grew even more powerful. However, in the novel, Hylam ended up annihilating the Imperial family anyway, so it wasn't even mentioned what had been offered to Huppert in the deal. Maybe if Lysias holds back from harming the Emperor, they will have paid a huge price, and Luna is sure Lysias knows that. When they arrive at Luna's quarters, she thanks him for the ride as she gets out of the carriage. Lysias smiles and says she doesn't need to thank him every time since they're married. Luna says that precisely because of that, they should thank each other and calls him by his name, Lysias. He makes a gesture as if something hit his heart, and she worriedly asks what happened. Smiling, Lysias replies that it was because his heart beat fast when he heard her call him by his first name. Back at the Imperial Palace, the Emperor is still thinking that he thought the two had made a contractual marriage to deceive others. But Lysias's gaze said the exact opposite, as if he were truly in love with Luna, giving an evil smile upon realizing that the Emperor says that it's much better this way since he'll be able to get much more out of Luna because of it. And that's it, everyone. What did you think of this new series? I personally really enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the next videos. Kisses, and see you next time.